Listen up, because what I'm about to show you will completely change the way you think about war. History books love to talk about heroes, generals, and epic battles, but they almost never tell you the real reason one side crushed the other. It wasn't always courage. It wasn't always numbers. And it definitely wasn't luck. Every single major war in history was decided by one side having a hidden advantage that the other side never saw coming. An advantage so powerful that once it was unleashed, the war was basically over before the final battle even began. Today I'm counting down the 10 greatest hidden advantages in military history. These are the secrets that turned underdogs into empires, that made superpowers collapse overnight, and that literally rewrote the map of the world. By the end of this video, you're going to see war in a completely different light, and you'll never look at history the same way again. Let's start at number 10. Number 10, the Greco-Persian Wars and the weapon nobody could see, geography itself. Everyone knows the story of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, but that's only half the truth. The real reason tiny Greece humiliated the largest empire the world had ever seen wasn't Spartan abs or clever speeches. It was the land. Persia rolled in with somewhere between 150,000 and 300,000 men, an army so large it drank rivers dry. Greece had maybe 100,000 total across all city-states, and most of them hated each other. On paper, it should have been a massacre. But the Greeks turned the battlefield into a meat grinder they designed themselves. They lured the Persians into narrow mountain passes like Thermopylae and Artemisium, where the Persian numbers became useless. Imagine trying to swing a sword when there are 50 guys crammed behind you and a cliff on both sides. You can't. At Salamis they did it again, this time on water. They tricked the Persian fleet into a narrow strait where their huge ships couldn't maneuver. Persian triremes started ramming each other in panic while the smaller, faster Greek ships picked them apart. The hidden advantage, terrain manipulation. The Greeks didn't need to be stronger. They just needed to force the Persians to fight on ground where strength didn't matter. One pass, one strait, one choke point at a time, they bled the largest empire in history to death without ever winning a fair fight. Geography was the silent killer the Persians never saw coming. Number 9. The Punic Wars and Rome's insane industrial cheat code. Everyone remembers Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants. What nobody remembers is that Rome lost almost every major land battle against him for 14 straight years. Rome lost 70,000 men in a single day, one of the worst defeats in history. But Rome still won the war. How? Because while Carthage had the greatest general who ever lived, Rome had something better: an assembly line for death. Every time Carthage destroyed a Roman army, Rome just built another one, and another one, and another one. They lost 300,000 men over the course of the Second Punic War, more than the entire population of Carthage, and still kept coming. They rebuilt entire fleets in months after losing them at sea. When Carthage sank 300 Roman ships, Rome responded by building 400 more in under a year. Carthage had Hannibal. Rome had shipyards that never stopped, farms that never ran out of recruits, and a Senate willing to tax its citizens into the ground to keep the war machine running. The hidden advantage was industrial endurance. Carthage could win every battle and still lose the war because Rome could replace losses faster than Carthage could inflict them. It wasn't strategy, it was production on a scale the ancient world had never seen. Rome didn't beat Hannibal. Rome outlasted him until Carthage simply ran out of men, money, and hope. Number 8. The Mongol conquests and the logistics superpower that made them unstoppable. Genghis Khan conquered more territory than anyone in history. More than Alexander. More than Rome. More than Napoleon. But his armies were almost always outnumbered. So how did a bunch of horse archers from the steppe crush empires that had stone walls, heavy cavalry, and millions of soldiers? The answer is something nobody else had figured out. Each Mongol rider carried 3 to 5 extra horses. That's not an army. That's a traveling hurricane. While European knights needed weeks to move 100 miles because their heavy war horses tired out, Mongol Tumans could cover 100 miles in a single day, switching to fresh horses without stopping. Enemy armies would wake up to find the Mongols already behind them, cutting off supply lines, burning crops, and vanishing before anyone could respond. They had a Pony Express system that could deliver messages across thousands of miles in days. They had pre-built supply depots hundreds of miles into enemy territory. They turned mobility into a weapon of mass destruction. The hidden advantage was logistical superiority on a level that wouldn't be matched again until the 20th century. The Mongols didn't win because they were braver or crueler. They won because no army in the world could move, feed, or communicate as fast as they could. By the time you saw the dust cloud, the war was already over. Number 7. The 100 Years' War and the day Mother Nature picked a side. Everyone thinks the English won because of the longbow. That's half true. The real MVP was mud, at cuirassy, poitiers, and especially Agincourt. The French had every advantage: more knights, heavier armor, better breeding, home turf. The English were exhausted, outnumbered, and starving. Then it rained. For days, the fields turned into knee-deep sludge. French knights in 70 pounds of plate armor tried to charge and literally sank. Their horses bogged down and panicked. Crossbowmen couldn't reload fast enough in the muck. English longbowmen, standing on slightly higher ground, fired volley after volley into a target that couldn't close the distance. At Agincourt, 6,000 Englishmen slaughtered up to 10 Zallos and French nobles in a few hours. The hidden advantage wasn't technology, it was weather warfare. The English didn't plan the rain, but they understood terrain and timing well enough to turn a soggy field into a killing zone. The French chivalry charged straight into a swamp and drowned in their own armor. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't steel, it's water. Number 6. The Ottoman conquests and the most terrifying youth program in history. For 600 years the Ottoman Empire expanded almost without stopping. They took Constantinople, the Balkans, the Middle East, North Africa. How did a tiny Turkish tribe become one of the largest empires ever? The answer was a human assembly line called the Devshirme, the child levy. Every few years the Ottomans would march into Christian villages in the Balkans and take the strongest, smartest boys aged 18. They converted them to Islam, erased their past, and raised them from childhood to be perfect soldiers. These were the Janissaries. No family ties, no mercy, no loyalty except to the Sultan. They were trained from childhood with the most advanced weapons of the era, muskets, cannons, discipline that made European armies look like drunk peasants. By the time they were adults, the Janissaries were a professional standing army decades before Europe figured out the concept. They had better guns, better drills, and zero fear of death because they literally had no other life to go back to. The hidden advantage was elite human capital created through forced recruitment and total indoctrination. The Ottomans didn't just conquer land, they manufactured loyalty in a lab and pointed it at their enemies. Terrifying, brutal, and insanely effective. Number 5. The American Civil War and the invention that let Lincoln fight with godlike speed. The Confederacy had better generals, better cavalry, and soldiers fighting for their homes. The Union had factories, railroads, and one thing nobody had ever used in war before: the telegraph. Abraham Lincoln practically lived in the War Department telegraph office. He could send orders to generals hundreds of miles away in minutes. When a battle started, he often knew the result before the commanding general finished writing his report. The Confederacy was still using couriers on horseback. Messages took days, sometimes weeks. By the time Robert E. Lee knew what was happening on his left flank, Ulysses S. Grant had already moved 3 corps to crush it. The hidden advantage was real-time command and control. For the first time in history, a leader could coordinate armies across an entire continent faster than the enemy could react. The telegraph didn't fire a single bullet, but it won the war. Number 4. World War I. In the moment war became a math problem. Everyone thinks World War I was mindless slaughter. Wrong. It was the first war where killing became an engineering equation. Artillery caused 70% of all casualties, and by 1916 both sides had turned gunnery into science. They used aerial photography, sound-ranging flash spotting, and complex ballistics tables to calculate exactly where shells would land before they even fired. The creeping barrage was perfected. Artillery walking forward in perfect synchronization with advancing infantry, so that by the time soldiers reached the enemy trench, the defenders were already dead. Trench systems themselves were designed using geometry, zigzag patterns to limit blast radius, calculated fields of fire, underground cities mapped with engineering precision. The hidden advantage was industrialized mathematics. War stopped being about courage and started being about who could solve the optimization problem faster. The side with better calculators literally killed more efficiently. Number 3. World War II and the invisible shield that saved Britain. In the summer of 1940, Hitler launched Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. Everyone expected the Luftwaffe to wipe the RAF from the sky in weeks. It didn't happen. Why? Because Britain had built a network of radar stations along its coast, the chain home system. German bombers thought they were achieving total surprise. In reality, British fighters were already in the air, waiting exactly where the Germans were going to be. Radar gave Britain 15 to 30 minutes of warning, enough time to scramble every available fighter while the Germans were still forming up over France. The Luftwaffe lost 3 planes for every British one. The Battle of Britain wasn't won by Spitfires alone. It was won by electrons bouncing off metal at the speed of light. The hidden advantage was electronic early warning. For the first time in history, a country could see its enemy coming long before they arrived. Radar didn't just save Britain, it made large-scale surprise air attack obsolete overnight. Number 2, the Cold War and the advantage nobody could copy, economic endurance. The Soviet Union had more tanks, more soldiers, and more nuclear weapons at certain points. So how did the United States win without firing a shot? Because America could play the long game forever. The USSR had to spend with 25% of its GDP on the military just to keep up. The US spent 7% and still outproduced them because the American economy was larger, freer, and far more innovative. Every time the Soviets built a new missile, the US answered with something better, and could afford 10 times as many. The USSR tried to match the Strategic Defense Initiative in the 1980s and simply ran out of money. The system collapsed under its own weight. The hidden advantage wasn't technology, it was capitalism's ability to generate wealth faster than communism could spend it. The Cold War wasn't won in a bunker. It was won in factories, stock markets, and shopping malls. And number 1, the Gulf War in the day war entered the age of GPS. In 1991, a coalition of 34 countries crushed the world's 4th largest army in 100 hours of ground combat. Iraqi soldiers surrendered to drones because they thought they were being watched by God. The hidden advantage was satellite precision. For the first time in history, every tank, every artillery piece, every supplied truck knew its exact position on Earth to within meters. Tomahawk missiles flew through windows. F-110 stealth bombers hit targets with laser-guided bombs while being invisible to radar. Coalition forces moved at night in sandstorms because they had GPS and the Iraqis didn't. Iraqi commanders reported entire divisions disappearing. They literally couldn't find their own units because they were navigating with paper maps while the Americans had space computers. The hidden advantage was total informational dominance. The Gulf War wasn't a fair fight. It was the moment the future arrived and steamrolled the past. So there you have it, the 10 hidden advantages that actually decided the greatest wars in history. Not bravery, not genius, not even superior weapons in most cases. Just one side seeing something the other side missed: terrain protection, mobility, weather, human capital, communication, mathematics, radar, economics, or satellites. History isn't written by the brave. It's written by the side that found the cheat code nobody else noticed. If you want to see more videos like this, where I pull back the curtain on the real reasons history happened the way it did, drop a comment with the war you want me to cover next. And if this video blew your mind even a little bit, smash that subscribe button because we're only getting started. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.